Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We have another very senior American congressional delegation here with us today. I know if there is one member of the U.S. Congress that needs no introduction whatsoever in Ukraine, it's Senator John McCain, and we are honored and delighted to have him back with us. Also delighted to have Senator Barraso of Wyoming back with us. And I'm especially pleased today to introduce Senator Cotton from Arkansas. Senator Cotton is a veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was honored yesterday to introduce him to some of Ukraine's military veterans who also have entered politics as elected members of the Rada. But I think all three have had an intensive day and a half in Ukraine, and I'm delighted we are able to have them for a little bit of time this morning as well. So, Senator McCain, and again, thank you so much for what you do for all of us as part of our partnership with Ukraine.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. As Ambassador noted, I'm joined by my two colleagues from the United States Senate, Senator Barraso of Wyoming and Senator Cotton of Arkansas, and we have come to show America's support for Ukraine's struggle and to urge our government, the United States government and the world, to do more to support this country, to urgently provide defensive weapons, intelligence, and other assistance that can help Ukrainians defend their sovereign country, and to not only continue but to increase crushing sanctions on Russia. We do this not just for Ukraine's sake, but because fundamental principles of European and global order are at stake. The principle that sovereign states have the right to make their own free decisions, that wars of aggression should be confined to our bloody past, and that power alone should not be a license to oppress and subjugate. As you know, a couple of days ago, the United States Senate voted unanimously to provide defensive weapons to Ukraine. I am confident the House of Representatives will do the same on this legislation, and we will urge the President of the United States to implement the will of Congress and the will of the American people, and that is to provide Ukrainian government and people with the ability to defend themselves against the naked aggression of Vladimir Putin. I've been pleased to see President Poroshenko and his government initiate a slew of reforms that will help Ukraine overcome its post-Soviet legacy of mismanagement and malfeasance. Yet this is only a starting point. We all know that more action is needed to root out endemic corruption, including a renewed commitment to stalled corruption investigations and the prosecution of corrupt officials and those responsible for past misconduct. Ultimately, there is no greater problem and no greater test for Ukraine's leadership than the fight against corruption. Certainly, some of us who know Misa Saakashvili were pleased to see him being appointed at Odessa, and he is doing a good job there in trying to clean up the corruption which is endemic there. Yesterday, we went to Dnipropetrovsk, where we met with various organizations and people, including the brave warriors at Dnieper One, a volunteer organization who have taken it upon themselves to arm themselves, to train and equip, and fight against the Russian invasion and aggression. In fact, two of their brave young men were killed the day before our visit. All over Ukraine, we are seeing people rise up and doing whatever they can to defend their territorial integrity against Vladimir Putin's naked aggression. We believe it is not only in Ukraine's interest, but all of America and the European interest to see Vladimir Putin's aggression reversed. So we are here again to express our solidarity with the people of Ukraine, our commitment to seeing that they provide the assistance that they need in every area, including economic. And I personally will never forget the experience of being in the Maidan where hundreds of thousands of people were just seeking their God-given rights. Senator Barraso.
Thank you, Senator McCain. I'm John Barraso from the state of Wyoming. Here once again to talk about people from the United States wanting to stand side by side with the people of Ukraine against this thug and this bully of Vladimir Putin. What we saw yesterday, we visited with volunteers as well as the Command Center for Eastern Ukraine Military Actions, people who are very brave, people of great character, people who are very courageous in the fight. It was also very impressive to be with some of the innovators, these young, creative, energetic, innovative people who have been developing technology, including drones, that are able to bring documentation of what the Russians are doing in Ukraine with moving more supplies, tanks into the area, and that is now well documented, which is an additional reason why we want to make sure that the people of Ukraine receive from the United States defensive weapons, and we're continuing to fight in a bipartisan way to get that done. Additionally, I'm from the energy state of Wyoming. The United States has been very blessed with incredible energy resources, a lot due to new advances in technology. We realize that not just Ukraine, but all of Europe is in some ways held hostage by Putin, by Russia, by energy. We know that more we can do to help with exporting energy from the United States to our friends and allies in NATO, in the Ukraine as well. All of those things help free people from Russia, because energy is a source not just of energy security, also economic security and independence. And we're continuing to work in Congress in a bipartisan way to make it easier to export American energy supplies to our NATO allies and to Ukraine.
Hi, I'm Senator Tom Cotton from the state of Arkansas. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan in the last decade, my men and I were on the front lines of freedom. This weekend, I feel like I'm once again on the front lines of freedom in Ukraine, a different kind of threat, to be sure, that you face from Vladimir Putin, but a serious threat to America and the Western way of life in general. As long as Russian troops illegally occupy Crimea and eastern Ukraine, then Europe cannot be whole, free, and secure. And if Europe is not such, then the United States cannot be secure. We want to ensure that what Ethiopia and Rhineland and the Sudetenland were in the 1930s does not become what Ukraine could be in this century, that we have put the wars of the last century behind us. And to do so, we stand with the people of Ukraine, just as the American people do, in trying to provide you the weaponry you need, the training and the assistance, and leading with partners in Western Europe to provide the kind of economic and financial aid and counseling that the country needs to make a decisive turn towards the West and away from Vladimir Putin and Russia.
Questions?
Questions? Peter?
Thank you. Peter Leonard, Associated Press. Are you not concerned that dispatching US weapons to Ukraine will only result in precipitating an arms race and therefore exacerbate the humanitarian problem in East Ukraine? And secondly, could you speak in any detail at all about the kinds of defensive weapons that you would envisage being sent to support the Ukrainian forces?
Well, to start with, I believe that the United States of America and the free world have a tradition going back to our revolution, where the French and others helped us fight against the British, going to examples like Afghanistan. After the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, there were those who thought if we helped the Afghans that it would provoke the Russians. Obviously, it dealt a blow that eventually led to the end of the Soviet Union. The United States has a tradition of helping those people who are struggling for freedom against thugs like Vladimir Putin. And for us to sit by and watch the dismemberment of a European nation for the first time in 70 years, and a upsetting of the liberal world order, which followed the bloody World War II is not only improper, it's disgraceful and shameful. It's disgraceful and shameful. The people of Ukraine have shown that they can defend themselves and they will fight. There were some of those same people you were talking about that said that people of Ukraine would not fight. They'll fight, and they will continue to fight. The question is, are we going to accede to the annexation of Crimea, guaranteed in the Budapest Agreement, agree to the dismemberment of the country as far as eastern Ukraine is concerned, while Vladimir Putin continues to piecemeal dismember the country, or whether we will stand up for what's right. That's what this is all about. And frankly, it's shameful that our European friends won't be of more of assistance, but most shameful that the United States of America won't lead.
I would also say that for the last year and a half, Western leaders have been constructing off-ramp after off-ramp for Vladimir Putin, and he keeps blowing past those off-ramps. It's time to stop constructing off-ramps and start constructing roadblocks. And the way we do that is to provide the defensive weapons that the young soldiers on the front lines that we met with yesterday need. As is often the case, morale is highest the closer you get to the front lines. They are fighting, and they are ready to fight and to die to defend their country and to defend freedom. We should stand with them to provide those weapons, in addition to the kind of non-lethal assistance they still need. Individual first aid kits down to the soldier level, medic first aid kits, command and control radios, intelligence assets, and other kinds of support. That's what they need to make their fighting effective, more effective than it already is, but they have shown that they have the will, which is oftentimes the most critical element of combat power.
I just mention one additional point. Vladimir Putin, I believe yesterday or the day before, talked about Ukraine and Russia being one country. Is there any doubt about what his ambitions are? Is there any doubt what he's trying to achieve by force of arms that he could never achieve in a free and open election of a democracy?
One question here.
Hello, Australia, New Zealand. Last year in September, I sent a letter to the US Embassy here in Kiev outlining my concerns of what was going on in Donetsk. I've been in Donetsk for over a year. I asked in my letter, I asked that the weapon systems currently used in Iraq and Afghanistan that are non-lethal, like MRAPs, night vision gear, etc., to be sent to Ukraine via our Ukrainian Antonov aircraft to aid us in this aggression by Russia. As yet, I haven't heard of any reply from the embassy on this, and currently a US Marine who has left Afghanistan says that they're still destroying non-lethal equipment in Iraq and Afghanistan as the US troops withdraw. Can we expect that the US government to give Ukraine these systems to help us?
All I can say is that we have urged the entire United States Senate 2 days ago, without disagreement, without anyone disagreeing, authorized the dispatch of weapons, defensive weapons to Ukraine. The House of Representatives feels the same. Overwhelming majority of the American people feel the same. But I can't answer for the President of the United States and his administration, except to say that I know that this is shameful, shameful, that we will not provide them with the weapons to defend themselves. They are fighting with 20th century weapons against Russia's 21st century weapons. That's not a fair fight.
We have a question in Ukrainian.
Канал Україна.
Ukraine channel. TV channel Ukraine. Tell us, please, whether you will go to Volnovakha, like it was announced, and why, and about your yesterday trip to Dnipropetrovsk. Can you be more specific about the mission that you accomplished there and who you met there?
We went to Dnipropetrovsk, where the embassy and our excellent ambassador recommended that we go to see both non-military as well as military volunteers who are helping the fighters, their families, and training and equipping as best they can. One of the most interesting parts of our visit was that the people at Dnieper 1 are constructing drones with styrofoam. And they showed us some of the video that they took, which frankly is far more clear than the very sophisticated equipment that is being used by the United States and our allies. So we went there because we wanted to meet them face to face. We met wounded as well, and we wanted to thank them and tell them of the American people's support, the ones that we represent, who care a great deal about them and are supporting them.
One more question over here. Will you be traveling to Slovakia is the question.
We will not. And actually, we travel on the advice of our embassy personnel who give us their best assessments of the security situation. So that was why we were able to pursue that itinerary, and frankly, I was very happy to have the chance to do that.
Question here.
Hello, my name is Nina Iglinski, Tagesspiegel Berlin. I'd like to ask you, what do you think will follow after the Minsk agreement failed? It's not official, but everybody knows the Minsk agreement is not working. And what should come after Minsk, and what should be the role of the United States in this kind of format, whatever it named or whatever take place?
There are daily and hourly violations of the Minsk agreement. The evidence is overwhelming that that's the case, and that Vladimir Putin may continue to pursue a strategy of just biting off small chunks of Ukraine. And so our argument is for increased sanctions, certainly no consideration of lifting them, but I have to be very frank, the dependency that the European countries have on Russian energy is a factor, in my view, of in determining what actions they take as regard to sanctions. Senator Barraso pointed out that we have the capability of delivering natural gas to the living rooms in Ukraine and the rest of Europe within 2 years if we did the right thing. It seems to me that is as high a priority as military assistance is. Do you want to?
Well, the key, of course, is to eliminate so much of the dependence, not just of Ukraine, but also of all of Europe to Russia. Russia has a leveraging ability with energy, with that power, to undermine other countries, make them more dependent economically for that energy, so that then, as we want additional European countries to come together for stronger sanctions against Russia, some of them may be reluctant to do it because they're still dependent on Russia for the energy. So as soon as we can get many of these European nations away from, and as you said, you're from Berlin, get other nations away from that dependence on Russian energy, the more likely they're able to stand up with the tougher sanctions and to try to enforce the agreements that Russia has been saying they're for, but we know that they're not. Their word is doing one thing, their actions are doing another, which is why we say, pay no attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. They continue to be very aggressive in terms of their activities, trying to bite piece after piece after piece away from Ukraine.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Senators, for your visit. My name is Nikolai Vorobyov. I'm Director of Center for Eastern European Perspectives in Washington and here in Kyiv. So, yeah, your staying here is very important for us, especially now. It's very hot, as you see. The first question is to Senator McCain. Senator, everybody are asking me here, are you going to run for the presidential elections in the United States? And the second question is, what would you do if you would be elected as the United States president? What would be your first steps toward Russian aggressions in Ukraine?
Well, in answer to your first question, there was in the southern part of our country, there was a philosopher who once said, there's no education in the second kick of a mule. So no, I will not be running for president. I'm very reluctant, and I have been in the intervening years, to say what I would do if I were president, because the American people made their choice. But I know this, for years, I have worried about Vladimir Putin and his ambitions. He's the one that stated the worst catastrophe of the 20th century was the breakup of the Soviet Union. He's the one who has acted in incredibly autocratic fashion. He has basically wiped out civil society and those organizations that represent it in Russia. And so his actions have been predictable. The thing that Vladimir Putin understands is solidarity. Vladimir Putin understands a strong NATO alliance. Vladimir Putin understands that there are penalties when he commits aggression. That does not mean that there's a new war, but it does mean that he must pay penalties for his actions. I've said many times, Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country, and sanctions can hurt. The biggest blow to Vladimir Putin has been the reduction in the price of a barrel of oil, for which we can thank the Saudi Arabians, not anything that we've done. So I think that the lesson of the Cold War was that we avoided war through strength. Ronald Reagan said it best, peace through strength. And right now, I am convinced that Vladimir Putin can literally believe that he could get away with murder. He is getting away with the murder of brave Ukrainians that are trying to defend their country. And until we stand up to him, that aggression will continue and put at risk Moldova, the Baltics, and other countries in the region.
One last question from the front in Ukrainian, gentlemen.
Can we have
Of course.
two more real quick?
Great.
Thank you very much for your assistance to Ukraine. I have one question. Can corruption in Ukraine prevent transfer of the weapons?
I think that corruption is a serious problem. We met with Mayor Klitschko this morning. He is also concerned about it. We met with the President and the Prime Minister and raised the issue with them. And I believe they realize that corruption is a vulnerability that this government has, and that the more often and sooner there is high-level, well-identified individuals brought to justice, the more the people of Ukraine will have confidence.
I would say that corruption is a concern, but the United States government has a long record over decades of experience of safely transferring all kinds of military aid to our allies without it falling into the wrong hands. I'm confident that we could do so again with the Ukrainian military. Again, the people with whom we've met, from the president down to the junior enlisted who are fighting on the front lines, are both dedicated to this fight, and also they want to see action against corruption at the highest levels with prosecutions, and at the lowest levels, that day-to-day Ukrainians can live without being extorted by bribes from civil servants who are underpaid and susceptible to that kind of nefarious activity.
Could I just add, we appreciate the work that Misha Saakashvili is doing in Ukraine, in Odessa, but also I'm confident that the government will move on this issue. And right now, the weapons are needed critically, are a critical issue in preventing Vladimir Putin from further encroachment in eastern Ukraine. So I do not believe that it is any impediment to the provision of weapons for the defense of this nation.
A couple of questions here.
Vitaly Senko, Union. Glad to see you, senators. My first question, what do you think about the fact that Russia and China are strengthening their cooperation in the light of for further perspective? And second question, what do you think about the impact of nuclear rhetoric that Putin gave a couple of days ago? Is it going to be a new arm race, or what's your opinion about this? Thanks.
Second question, Vladimir Putin's comments about the nuclear weapons issue, of course, is very disturbing. I hope that he will abide by the agreements that have already been made. It's also disturbing the Russian sale of these weapons, important weapons, to Iran. But all I can say is that this and comments like Ukraine is really part of Russia are very disturbing.
Well, his comments are very disturbing. His actions are disturbing as well. And this is yet again an example of why the West has to draw the line in Ukraine. If Vladimir Putin will not only rattle the nuclear saber, but perhaps put Iskander missiles in Crimea, what's to stop him from putting them in Kaliningrad and threatening most of Western Europe? The United States, as well as Western European countries, know that he's violating the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. Our own Secretary of Defense has said that we're going to develop countervailing capabilities, defensive capabilities. We need to accelerate those efforts, and we need to work with our Western European allies and Eastern European allies to ensure that we are countering both the rhetoric and the actions of Vladimir Putin on every front.
We have two more questions. This one will be in Ukrainian.
I will put my question in Ukrainian. Senator McCain, we met a year ago on the 14th of December 2014 when you were representative with the plaster on both arms. And then for 5 years you were in a war prisoner. How can people survive this for our people? Can you give some advice for resettlement, for self-adaptation, and how we can help people with the syndrome or post-traumatic syndrome after the war?
Most important factors for those who have served in combat defending their nation is the appreciation of their citizens. And I know the people of Ukraine honor those brave young men and some women who are out there literally sacrificing their lives to defend the territory of their nation. One of the problems with the Vietnam War was that those veterans were not welcomed back, and that did have an effect on some of these mental situations. But I see nothing in Ukraine but honor and appreciation for those who have served and sacrificed, and I think that will be of great benefit. I also think that one of the lessons that the United States has learned in Iraq and Afghanistan is how to treat the wounded. And we would like to see a program where United States help with prosthesis and other treatment, traumatic brain injury, and those other injuries that are sustained in combat, that we could be of more assistance in helping to treat them.
Right. One final question here in English.
TV channel 1+1, Dmitro Svetnenko. My question is about propaganda, Russian propaganda. As I have two examples, one of them 2 weeks ago, they wrote that Senator McCain is dead. Do you know about that? And today the main
that I was dead?
Yes, 2 weeks ago. It was
that would have come as welcome news in some
And today the main news in Russian propagandic media that Vladimir Zhirinovsky, do you know who is Vladimir Zhirinovsky, told to journalists that DNR and LNR created in Gosdep in United States. So how to live with that propaganda, and how do you have any, I don't know, methods how to stop it or live with that propaganda?
Well, thank you. You raise a very important question. By the way, I was also sanctioned by Vladimir Putin. My visit to Siberia had to be canceled. But look, this is a very important item. One of the major factors in winning the Cold War without firing a shot was our information capabilities, such as Radio Free Europe, Voice of America. It was beamed into the then Soviet Union. I talked to many afterwards that said it was those programs that helped and inspired them, and stories of people like Václav Havel and Nathan Sharansky and many others. So right now, there is a very strong and effective propaganda campaign being carried out by Vladimir Putin, and it's particularly hitting the Baltics, Moldova, some of the Eastern European countries. And we have to develop a counter to that. We have to make sure that the people are told the truth. And it's one of the major challenges we have, along with other aspects of cyber. But information is knowledge, and when the wrong information or false information is given to people long enough and often enough, then they begin to believe it. So we have our work cut out for us.
Thank you, gentlemen. Oh, my apologies, sir.
I'll say that in the long run, maybe the biggest blow that we could strike against Russian propaganda is a successful Ukraine, the Ukraine that is free and prosperous and safe with sovereignty and territorial integrity. No matter how many propaganda stories the Kremlin tries to put out, a successful Ukraine will refute them all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.